And welcome back to another episode of Pokemon Knowledge. As you can see from the person on the screen, we are in for a pleasant treat tonight. Now, if you guys do not know who Peekdatchu is, I'm going to give him a little bit of time to just introduce himself because it is the first time he's been on this channel. I'm sure you guys have seen him before. He has his own channel. He has a lot of great lives very similar to this. If you guys are curious, a link to both his YouTube channel and his Instagram is down in the description below. But with that said, first off, Peekdatchu, I just want to say, first, thank you for coming on the channel. And second off, for anybody out there who may not know who you are, feel free to introduce yourself and let everyone know a little bit about your Pokemon backstory.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Well, first off, thanks so much for having me on. We were talking a little bit pre-stream. This feels like it's been a long time coming, so it's nice to finally talk to you, and I appreciate you, bringing me on to talk tonight. I always enjoy a nice Friday night, card talk. So, yeah, I mean, I'm Peekdatchu. If you guys have seen, I always say the Nigel Thornberry Pikachu face, like that's me. You probably see me like in
Where did that
lives.
come from, by the way? That's like a little
I just
scary, actually.
it just like hit me in the head one day. I was like, what's the funniest like meme picture I've ever seen of a Pikachu? And I was like, Nigel Thornberry, because that was when the memes of him being like Pocahontas, like rolling down the hill and he turns around and it's like his face. And I was like, I'm just going with a Nigel Chew. Like I have to do it. So but yeah, so as far as who I am, I'm a collector, buyer, seller of Pokemon and other assorted TCGs. If anybody follows my content or has seen that, I just love to collect stuff. I like oddities. I like stuff that traditionally is very difficult to acquire. It's kind of a bittersweet curse, but I absolutely love the chase, the treasure hunt, finding items, whether they are very popularized or if there's something that maybe a small community even knows exists. And that's something that we all kind of treasure hunt it together. So I'm all about the chase when it comes to the cards and items I acquire. As far as my backstory into getting back into cards, I feel like everybody says the same thing, right? The same old. Started as a kid, got back into it as an adult. I was back in the hobby around 2018, I want to say, something around there, but I had no social presence at all. I wasn't really watching a lot of content. Actually jumped into, actually, you know what? Before I keep going, I knew it was coming on tonight. So
yeah. Cheers.
You will almost never see me drink a Bud Light, but cheers to PK. Thanks for having me on, brother.
No problem. It's
That's
still
funny.
good once it touches your lips, right?
Yeah, right. But anyway, back in 2018, I jumped back in, started just really, I found my childhood collection, graded my first two cards, which was a first edition Shining Gyarados, and then I graded a 1998 White Star birthday Pikachu. So those are the very first cards I ever graded. That's really kind of what
got.
The Gyarados got a PSA 9, and the White Star birthday Pika got a 10.
Oh,
20
nice.
years in the 20 years in the binder, which is so crazy. For cert, if anybody's curious. But yeah, that was something that back then that was like $8 grading, $7.50 or something like that. And when I first started looking back into cards, I was like, people grade these, they put it in plastic. That's so cool. That was the biggest thing that made me kind of get bit by that bug. I was like, that's really awesome that they can put it in something and it's like protected and all of that. I was like, I've got some pretty cool cards and I didn't really know values. I didn't know how to look up eBay comps. I wasn't really paying attention to it. I was like, I'm going to ship these off. Got them back in like 4 weeks or whatever it was. It was so quick back then. And then, yeah, after that, just started finding content, found Pratt first off. I was actually very, very early to Dan's channel. Just because you tend to rabbit hole and you kind of see the recommended Dan Catch 'em All collectibles. I'm sure most people in the chat know him, but the very first video, one of the very first ones I watched from start to finish was his video that said, I quit my job to do Pokemon full time. And I can't even remember how long ago that video was, but once I found that, it was just a deep dive into the rabbit hole, watching all of Pratt's stuff. DJ Gigabyte was after that, Jake, a lot of that stuff. And then at that point, I'd say probably about a year in, was buying and selling a little bit, just, personal collection, just getting rid of some stuff. I was like, wow, people pay $330 for a PSA 9 first edition Shining Gyarados. What a steal for me. So wish I would have hung out of that card. But
well, it's funny. It's funny too that's when those are your cards as a kid was Neo Rev, because that was a little bit later, So you did you miss that 99 hype period, like the base set Jungle Fossil, base set 2, Team Rocket? And did you get in at the Neos?
As far as when I actually got into the cards originally,
yeah,
or when I got back in,
because if you had that Shining Gyarados as a kid, I'm asking, did you miss
I pulled it.
Oh,
No, I
so you
pulled it.
pulled it. You were still in at that point. So did you miss
Yeah.
the 99 craze though?
No, I was in it all the way,
Oh,
all
so
into
you
that.
stayed
So
in. Okay.
I
See,
stayed, I
that's
stayed in, yeah, a little bit and just really enjoyed it. I mean, it was something that, I never really left them behind, but it's kind of that classic thing. Like you end up going to high school, people don't think it's cool anymore. Everything dies down, but I never got rid of the cards. And I was one of those kids who always put them in sleeves. Like I just cared about the condition. I didn't want to mess them up, because
sure.
everybody's seen the scratched up, like penciled in Charizard or whatever. I was never one of those kids. That was weird. I kept the condition quality. But yeah, just got back into it and then made a social presence and just really out of the need to want to engage in the community a little bit more. Actually, Pokemon and the community was the reason I even downloaded Discord. I never even used the Discord prior to that. So, but yeah, that's kind of the brief kind of overview of how I got back in.
Yeah. And we met twice. We met the first time was at the Leonhardt pop-up shop down in Texas,
Yep.
and we met again in Denver. So we've now met each other twice, which it's a small world when you think about it. And but so one of the things you do and is pretty fascinating for a lot of people and interesting because it's definitely not a route people go is you've gone really into the nitty gritty of like trophy cards, super rare, super hard to source stuff. And there's a very big difference for people. And I hope everybody out there at home who's watching this could understand there's a difference between a card that's relatively rare versus like absolute scarcity to it. And you really go to that absolute scarcity factor. So I am curious, like, how do you go about that? And, the simple part is you go after some cards that it's not that people aren't collecting them, it's that people don't even know they exist in the first place to even go after them. So you have really gone like that one step further. So let me know like a little bit about how have you gone that route?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. And it's kind of one of those things you think about, right? Like what's harder to find, the card or the information on the card?
Yeah.
And really what I did is when I got back in to the hobby, when I was a kid, I mean, it was kind of the birth of the internet. For anybody like in their 20s is like, what is he even talking about? But like you didn't order just things from Japan. Like it wasn't, that was such an exotic place. Like nobody knew where these things were coming from. But what I used to do is I used to always look up Japanese promos as a kid. Like I'm talking like 8, 9, 10 years old, like on dial up, waiting on the picture. Whoops, sorry, waiting on the photo to like load the entire time. And when I got back on the hobby, I wanted to look those up again. I was like, hey, I remember those cards that I like couldn't afford because they were $40, and that was just crazy back then to me as a kid. So I
Like
just
the
started looking at
Japanese birthday Pikachu, like that's the one
yeah,
Japanese that's the one Japanese card that like sticks out to everybody. It's like that was a super rare card. Oh my God. Like no
yeah,
one
and
could
not a
have
lot of
it.
people even know that story, right? Back then it was like this is worth thousands of dollars.
Thousands,
There's
yeah.
so little. And I actually that was a gift. I asked for it for my 8th birthday. I asked my parents on eBay. I was like, please order me this card. Like, this is all I want. Like, it's $40. I know it's so much money. And they ordered it. And I got it from Japan with a little thank you, like Pikachu origami, even back
Oh,
then. And
I have one of those somewhere too. They still give them to you when you get
yeah,
stuff in Japan. Yeah.
yeah, I have one from an order I did. I sent it to Green Shiz for a Secret Santa. I was
Oh,
like, I'll
okay.
throw this in there for him. But yeah, so I started looking at those, and then I just wanted to know other promos that were out there that were really hard to get and had really cool stories of acquisition. Anybody who's ever watched my content or seen me in lives, like they are probably tired of me saying that phrase, but the backstory to acquisition is very important to me. Back, especially in the old vintage days of the harder it was and the more stuff you had to physically do to get something, those are what I'm really attracted to. So like JR stamp rallies are a really, really big, one of my favorite sets of all time.
Yeah.
A&A airline promos, some of the best in my opinion, just very, very cool historical items like that. So and worlds promos. I think I saw John, John in the chat. I see John Doe and John. I don't know if that's the same person, but they were asking about the 2004. Oh yeah, I love it. I've got a whole stack of them actually in there
Yeah.
too. They're great
Yeah,
and readily
they're a dime a
available.
dozen.
Yeah, beautiful cards. But somebody mentioned my 2004 Worlds like stuff that I've collected, and Worlds promos really were what I deep dove into. E4, I found that obviously searching all the Japanese promos and stuff and just started going down the rabbit hole, and then watching Gigabyte and Jake, Pokenomics talking about Worlds cards. I was just like, these are what I want to look for. As you said, very, very difficult cards to find, especially 2004. That was one that I've been very lucky and blessed to be able to find the cards I have. So I think John asked me about the top 16 2004 tropical wind. So I did grade that, and that was a PSA 10, and that was a pop 3. For
Wow.
anybody who doesn't know that card, that is I'll probably never see that card again. I'll probably never have one pop up and have the option to buy it.
Did you
Just
sell it
found
though, or did you grade it and sell it, or are you still
I
holding on?
did. I did. I graded it and sold it to Dave Person, actually. So Dave flew out here for some
Number one
convention.
Pokemon collector right there.
Dude, such a good dude. That's one of my really good friends in the hobby. I was in Vegas for work a few months back, and we had like a 3-hour dinner, just had a ton of conversation. I mean, he is such a cool guy. I wish he'd come back to YouTube, but he's a busy man.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was one of those guys where at the time when I graded it, I was so happy to have it. And I held on to it for a few months and just really enjoyed, the chase of finding it. And that's kind of what I talked about in the beginning. Like, I love finding them. I love the journey to getting the card. I've never really been one of those people who sits and kind of stares at them and like pulls them out and flips through binders or anything like that. I mean, I do enjoy holding on to cards, but more importantly, I enjoy finding them. And Worlds
Sure.
cards are always extremely difficult, and competitors are always the most difficult people, in my opinion, to buy from. So if you're able to actually get over all those hurdles, it's a really big accomplishment, and a feeling of accomplishment, once you do that. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where the motivation of all that, came from.
And I know you've had, like, he's become at this point now a pretty famous, competitive player. You had it on your channel for one of your lives, and you had Joe Echo-based Collectibles, which a lot of people in this hobby are probably familiar with Joe because he is active on YouTube. He's been a guest on my channel, multiple times. But the other person you had on was probably like a little more obscure player, and that was Blastoise Kid. And on that live, he showed some absolutely insane banger stuff. And not only that, like, end up finding out his dad won like a prize at the 99 Tropical Mega Battle, and then what that prize was. I'll let you tell everybody like what that prize was, but it literally like now changes the entire history of the hobby. Finding out that his dad won that, and it changes the entire population of one of the scarcest English sets we've ever seen because of how it was distributed. And I'll let you go ahead and tell a little bit about that live.
No,
That
it was just
insane.
It was just crazy. And yeah, for anybody who isn't familiar, I have a series that I put together on YouTube called Collector's Showcase. It was 7 or 8 episodes that I did. I had 2 people on each episode that I interviewed, and it's just a really, really cool series. We had, again, Blastoise Kid, Echo Base, TCA Gaming, Rusty was on there, Charlie Herlocker, Dan, Catch 'em All. I mean, we had a lot of really awesome people on there, and a lot of different types of collectors, not all YouTube content creators, just really kind of like PK said, like under the radar type people. I just felt, for me, I would ask people, especially John, Blastoise Kid. I was like, hey, have you heard of Blastoise Kid? Do you know who this is? And people were like, no, who are you talking about? What is this? And I found him because of him posting a Tropical Mega Battle shirt when he had like 60 followers or something. And I was like, what is this? And then he said, hey, this is when I won the tournament back in 2002. And I was like, a competitor who's actually talking about Pokemon, who's posting items, like, this is weird. This doesn't exist. So I spoke to him. We talked for a good while for, a few months. And then when I put the series together, I was like, hey man, do you want to come on and like talk about your history? I mean, I just found his whole backstory fascinating, but for what he did, him and his brothers basically ran the old school tournaments back in the day. So the Tropical Mega Battles, all of the, like regional tournaments and stuff, his whole family was known for doing that. He had 2 older brothers. They would all just win, and they all won an age bracket in Tropical Mega Battle, which a lot of people don't know, which is so crazy to think like this dynasty existed.
That one family won all that.
All of it. And the cool thing about him is his dad kept every single thing him and his brothers accumulated over their competitive play. John is he's an acquired taste, I think, for certain collectors in the hobby, because he does not care about collecting at all. All he cares about is winning and competing, and he got cool items on the way. He does not know anything as far as value. He just knows the stuff is cool, and there's probably a price premium to it. But when we had him on the live, I mean, man, he probably had, no kidding, like 70 or 80 different autograph, like Academe cards he was showing off. He had a pre-release Clefable that he was showing. He had my favorite thing was he had a framed invitation to the Tropical Mega Battle, which I thought was so cool. I was like, anything that I could have from that collection, like that would be it, just because it's so awesome. But yeah, he was extremely obscure. No one really knew who he was. That was honestly one of my favorite episodes that we did, because there was a moment where Joe, Echo-based Collectibles, and I were just literally just mouth open, like watching him pull out.
It live, and I was also like, in a state. I was in a series of shock, especially when he was going through. I mean, just the amount of Arita signatures he had was just a preposterous amount. Like people spend their whole life going to different signature events to get half that many, you know? So
And back then when he was in it, it wasn't, signatures weren't what they are today. I mean, they
no,
were not. And they're, I
it
mean,
was you handed the guy 20 and they signed all 20 for you right in front of you, and that was the end of that.
yeah. And then what you did is you throw them in your shoebox or whatever as a competitor. You didn't care. And then you just went home, but
Yep.
luckily with John, his dad, it kept all of this. And what PK was referencing, which was one of my favorites, I actually just posted a clip on my channel. I've just been clipping things from the episodes I like. But his dad competed in a parents tournament, an unofficial parents tournament at the Tropical Mega Battle in 2002 in Hawaii. And what he did was he played, I think he got fourth is what he said. And they had a whole table of prizes for parents and stuff like that. And his dad told him, oh, it's okay, John, like they can have all the cool stuff. We've gotten so much stuff here already. So the very last thing his dad did, he just grabbed the last thing on the table, which was like I don't know, he didn't even know what it was. It was just a container or something. So he ended up opening that. And that was the fourth, like TMB, like versus deck or whatever,
Which
with the
is
tropical
insane.
breeze. It just, yeah, everyone thought there were three of those, like for the longest time.
Yeah.
But he had the fourth one, and that's what he graded with CGC. And just to be able to hear that live, like the story of how it was acquired, is so awesome. Because stuff like that. I mean,
The fact
literally
that you can name who owns them, the fact that we know that Zach just bought his, that Rusty has his, that oh my God, Charlie has his. I mean, that's three right there. And now, like, just some random dad has one. It's just a preposterous, and just the dollar amount on that. And when Zach was on my channel during one of my lives, he showcased it for the first time to a public audience. Some people like knew he acquired it, but nobody had actually seen him. And then he ended up making a video after the fact, but it was the first time he showcased it. And I remember watching it real time because I was talking to him. I was just like, this is one of the coolest things anybody's ever showed me real time. And one of the very important facts he said during that live stream was, it really doesn't matter if there's 3 copies of this, or if there's 4, or if there's 6, or there's 10, because at the end of the day, it will be such a small limited release opposed to the absolute vast buyer pool for stuff like that. And Rattle was in the live too, and the way Rattle said about those is, the one thing cool about English Versus series is that it was an actual set. Like, it was given out by Pokemon in a legitimate way. It's not one of those products that made its way through the back door of some
right.
printing facility and it was stolen and there's a terrible backstory. Like, no, we know how these were released. And then now Australian's Blastoids kid, the fact that his dad did a parents event and that was how he acquired his, it was still a Pokemon ran Tropical Mega Battle event just for the parents. So it's
Which
not
is so cool that it was the
yeah,
parents. I just think that's amazing that they
but
said,
it's not like a shady thing. So it just,
yeah, right.
I mean, those things are one of the least tainted items, and hopefully they don't get super tainted in the future. So
Yeah, I just think that they, stuff like that, again, just the being able to, and this kind of goes into my entire I guess collecting and things that I'm interested in, stuff that has a historical value to it, in my opinion, for the hobby.
yeah.
So being able to point and say this was the event that it was there for. And it's not always competitive play. I mean, again, JR stamp rallies were cool because you had to go to 30 stations, get a stamp on a booklet, and then they give you a folder with the Mount Fuji Pikachu, which is one of my all-time favorite promos. And then a lily pad Mew. Just having to go around and do that. I have those, I've bought so many of those folders and those cards trying to grade a Gem Met 10 Mount Fuji Pikachu, which is so difficult to do. I think it's pop 15. But just being able to I have the old stamp book with all the stamps in it, and just to think there was a kid living in Japan who went on the bullet train station and just went around in the railway and got this stamped, and now it's come full circle to me. It's just cool to have that history with it. And I've always been a lot more attracted to the promos and the story behind cards versus just ripping them from a pack. I still think it's cool. It's a really fun to open product, but there's nothing necessarily special about it, in my opinion. It's kind of more luck, if you pull something. But that's primarily why I don't really get a lot of set cards. I don't really focus on those. They're not as interesting to me.
Those JR Stamp Rally promos, first of all, I love the Mewtwo because the Mewtwo is just just the best artwork. I call it doing the Kamehameha, straight out of Street Fighter, the Balukin. It's just fantastic artwork. But yeah, it was always a super nichey thing. And then it shows you sometimes what big Pokemon channels influence could have. Like Pat Deep Pocket Monsters ended up making a video talking about those. And then I remember watching that video and I was just like, well, there it goes. Like, way to go, Pat. Like, thanks a lot, So it's funny that sometimes, just one video like that, I mean, that video probably ends up getting a million views, the way the algorithm runs with his channel and stuff, and how many people watch that. And it's like, oh man, if you got a million people and let's just say half of 1% goes out and buys up these cards, I'm like, there they go. They're gone forever. Just half of 1% of a million. So
It's crazy too with as limited as some of those events are. I mean, even the ANA promos, the ANA airline promos, they are always available to buy.
They're always available.
That's the thing. And like
you can get them in bulk lots still.
Yeah, and there were like 2 or 3 months when those were available to buy. So I guess they just had
this is what he's talking about, and I'll show him on screen, and you could tell people like how you could get these ANA promos, and you could see.
Yeah, so basically you had to get on a flight between, and I'd have to look at the exact months, but there's a 98, 99, and I think they have 01 as well. That's my favorite Pikachu art, actually, the one where he's winking with the plane next to him.
And it's got the airplane in the background too, and it's like a weird flying Pikachu feel to it. It's just
it's so cool. It's like captures the nostalgia of the hobby for me. But you had to basically get on a plane. If anybody's ever seen photos of like the big Pokemon plane, like basically those, you had to get on a flight in a certain time frame, like a 3-month, 90-day window. And if you did, you could trade your boarding pass basically, or show them you had a boarding pass. They would give you this folder with these promos in them, which is so crazy to think that there's so many available. I guess they just printed so many. Who knows back then? But
I don't think they're that available. I just think I bet you this video all said and done will get between 1,000 and 2,000 views when this video is all said and done. And out of that 2,000 people, I think you would be shocked at how many people have never heard of ANA promos. And just the fact that you brought it up and I've never showed those on my channel before shows you how obscure they are,
Yeah, no, it's true. And that's what's funny is sometimes, when I'm talking to people, I'll touch on like certain promos. I'm like, yeah, this or the Toyota promos, the Domino's Pizza,
oh yeah,
like Snorlax
Arcanine and the Pikachu
and the Pikachu
the promos, yeah.
Yeah, so I have like the Toyota promo Pikachu at a PSA 9, which is the highest grade I've ever seen. I don't think I've ever seen a 10, and it's like impossible to find.
There's the Arcanine one too.
Yeah, the only reason I stayed away from the Arcanine is because it completely is the exact same art on other things. The Pikachu is similar, but the background's a little bit different. Yep. But it's just even being able to find those in a higher grade was insane. But I love the idea of like back then you had to go to a Toyota dealership. I don't know if you had to buy a car or not. I don't know if you had to do that or not. But I'm like, if that is the case, like how cool is it to be like, okay, I've got something that somebody had to buy a car for, and now I've got that card. So
and you could get that card in light play for like $30 to $40. I mean, we're not breaking the bank with a card like that, and it's just I have them. I don't even be able to pull one out for you right now, but
I think I've got one. I'll grab it. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, but no, and the reason why Peak likes stuff like this, and the reason I like stuff like this is it's not always just about the card. I think the card has a lot to do with it, but more important than just the card, like Peak was mentioning, it's the story. And when you can start tying stories into different parts of your collection, I just think it adds to the overall feel of your collection. And one of the things I talk about a lot on my channel, I'm sure if you've been watching this channel enough, everybody out there watching this, you'll often hear me say, one of the things you'll find in this hobby is that you will want your collection to start having some sort of identity to it. Because as people's collections grow, it starts to lose identity. But a card like that, where you have the story of that card, it has an identity to it. So when it's in your collection, there is an identity. Yeah. And that Pikachu it's like right out of the Pokemon first movie. It's the same exact Pikachu artwork, just a different background.
Yep. I was gonna say the background's kind of this forest, like I hate that I've got my glare on here, but kind of this forest background. This is exclusive to this specific promo. Now, somebody did message me on Discord, and there is this exact art, but it's a Bulbasaur deck or something that it came in, some other obscure Japanese deck that I wasn't aware of that it's the exact same art, but the stamps on the card are different, but it's still kind of a unique thing, which, as I mentioned, the reason I like that is just mainly because it's not a reprinted art and it's specific to that event. And then there's the JR Stamperelli, the Mew.
Oh yeah, yep. And then that Mew ended up printed out in Jungle, then they reprinted it in Evolutions.
Yeah, and it's the weird stuff. Like this is non-glossy. That's what makes it different. So like,
and Japanese jungle, not English jungle. For everybody out there who's listening, it is different in Japanese opposed to English. So the first Mew we ever got in English was the Black Star promo number 8. That was
mhm.
Pokemon League promo, and then the first set release was technically Japanese, and that was the Japanese jungle. And I've always been a little jealous of that fact. And then that card ended up getting reprinted in Evolutions, and people still go after that card, that Lily Pad Mew.
Yeah, I am so jealous of a lot of Japanese releases. It's crazy that like even like I had some like cards I had just like over here, but like even this is my all-time favorite Mew art ever.
Yeah.
And even like the play promos are just like we have nothing like this in English. So
Yeah. And the thing about play promos too is like you have to send in your old ones, to like continue the level up, and like that is just adding one more level to it. It's like, okay, you get the card you want, and then you want the better card, you have to take the card you wanted, send it away, try to get the better one. Play promos are crazy. That's why when you look at like the gold star ones, it's like, whoa boy, how did
yeah,
somebody
it's
even get this? I mean,
well,
how did you
even
have
like
enough time?
Masaki promos are the same way. You have to send
Yeah,
in the Bills PC with the de-evolved Pokemon to get the
evolved and then
evolved
evolved it.
versions.
Yeah.
So great. Like that is one of the coolest release. It's hard for me to think of a cooler releases than Masaki promos. And for anybody like watching us not familiar with those, and just so you guys know, most people are not familiar with probably the bulk of what PK and I are talking about. It requires so much research to look at this stuff, but I just think they're so fantastic and so cool to know about. But yeah, Masaki's you had to send I'm trying to think of one of the Masaki cards. So like you had to
There's
send a
like Kadabra, you had to send in the Abra.
yeah, so you had to send in like an Abra with a Bills PC card, just like in the game. You had to mail it to Pokemon, and they would mail back the Kadabra and all that. It was just like so crazy to think about.
And you were a kid during this time,
Yeah.
like you couldn't
And you
even
were
go to the
physically
post
mailing.
office to buy a stamp. And again, this is in Japan though, but still, it's such a crazy next level.
And they all have the quote unquote famous Masaki dent on the back
Yeah,
on
the
the
dents.
corners and what they sent it back in. So like when you start seeing those in like grades of 9 and 10, it's like the
Next to
survival rate, like it's like surviving a zombie apocalypse. It's like, how did this thing make it out alive?
Yeah.
And just being able to find that stuff, true rarity with conditional rarity is always really fun. Because I do find myself chasing conditional rarity on certain cards, but ultimately, kind of like you mentioned in the kind of the intro, the really obscure rarity of some of these items, it's just so fun to find. You come across a random person on Facebook, somebody hits you up on Reddit, somebody finds you on Instagram, which has happened. Hey, I've got this. Have you heard of this? Well, I've had it for X amount of time. As a collector, we our mouths water at that, right? Like we all hope to get that DM, and it's like, holy crap, like let's make this happen.
Yeah. You
It's
got a
just
guy
really exciting.
I mean, think about a guy like SM Pratt. He's owned almost every single chase card that's known to man. But one of the cards that he's most fond of is his University Magikarp because of the way he acquired it. It's not about the grade, because I think his is like a grade 8, but it was the
Mhm.
way he acquired it. He bought a collection from Japan, and for whatever
Found it.
reason was flipping through it, and there it just was sticking out like the only Magikarp in Pokemon doing a hyper beam. I mean, that card just jumps out at you, jumps off the screen. And I think that's one of his favorite cards ever, just because of the way he acquired it. So it's like that story to it.
Yeah,
But,
no, absolutely. I'm sorry. I'm laughing at John's comment. He said, Peak, you were higher than Pikachu on that balloon when you sold your 04 win, mate. I hear you, man. I will probably never have that again. I highly doubt I'll ever have it as a 10. Yeah, actually, if anybody looks up 2004 Tropical Wind top 16, if you look on PSA's website or just type in 2004 Tropical Wind and just look at the set, you know how they always have a card at the very top? That's my card.
That's yours?
At the
Oh,
top.
that's
Yeah.
sick.
So
Yeah.
it's like forever there for me to be able to go back and look into. But I will say,
Do you remember did you get upcharged? I'm guessing on that, what that was?
I got upcharged $100.
Good for you.
But think about this though. No comps. There's never going to be comps on some of these world cards. So it's like,
Yeah.
I probably could have even gone in and said, hey guys, like I could have fought it, but at that point I'm like, I don't care. Like I'll just send it in.
My card back.
Yeah, just please get here safely.
And please don't get lost in the mail.
Yeah, and what's crazy is I was following the pop reports, the entire time it was at grading, and I was like, I just kept seeing stuff, and you know, that's a card that you just don't see get sent in. Like, so if the pop changes, like that's your card. And I
Yeah.
saw the 10 happen, or a 10 happen and a 9 happen. And I know who had the 9 because I almost bought that as well. But I was like, I didn't know which one it was. So then finally the grades hit, and I was like, holy crap, I just got a 10 on this thing. I cannot believe this.
Yeah.
But to speak to what John had said, yeah, it's not something I regret, mainly because the price paid and the price sold is, I would do that every day, all day. I mean, it doesn't even make sense like what the ROI on that was, but
Yeah.
more importantly, it allowed me to facilitate and begin a relationship with Dave, which if anybody doesn't know Dave Purrs and Uncle Dave, like just number one English Pokemon collector. He has one of every single English Pokemon card ever printed. And I'm not exaggerating. One of every single one.
And he's acquired a lot of those himself. Like he goes to Worlds and he's the guy that gets the first card because he pays the most. And then everyone else who buys cards, then you're like, all right, Dave has gotten his. Now we can try to get ours. He's that type of dude. So
yeah, they just wait behind him and buy what you need, and then I'll get whatever the scraps are. But he has every card, every trophy, like that's in English. Like he has everything, and just such a wealth of knowledge, such an interesting individual. Yeah, he's a really good guy. So I would say that it was absolutely worth the price sold, but more importantly, it was definitely worth the relationship, with that. Because even if I had that card today, I mean, sure, could I get maybe a little bit more? Maybe. I don't know. But, you got to think like it is a grail card that I could hold on to forever, but I would rather meet the people in that market or the people who are buying and are just as interested in those and facilitate relationships more than anything, because really the community and the people are my favorite thing to do. And Dave and I talk regularly. So that's something that, I'll trade a Pokemon card for a friendship any day. That maybe not everybody, but that's just me.
yeah.
So
No, that is an awesome story. And it's amazing that you did that. And you may be the only person to ever do that, which is even that one level higher too, that you might be the only person to ever do that. And to be the only person to ever do something in this hobby, because this is not a small hobby, and we've seen that now, like time after time. This is not a small hobby. The fact of how much Pokemon could sell on a daily basis of every single modern product and stuff, we're talking thousands and hundreds of thousands. I can't even like start wrapping my brain around how many people are in this hobby. So for anybody to do one thing and be the only one to do it is an amazing feat. So congratulations on that, man.
thank you. And I do know what really made it special for me is I bought it from the original competitor. So that was amazing to do. It sat at his parents' house for 15 years in a binder, in the original competitor binder. And what's funny is I bought the regular competitor set from him. So the languages with just the 04 stamp, no top stamps or anything. And I saw him post top 16. I was like, dude, what do you want for it? Like, name your price. Let's make this happen. And he was like, somebody bought me out. And I was like, all right, well, I got a competitor set, so I'm happy. So like 2.5 weeks later, I get a DM from him, which does not happen. Like when sales fall through, they fall through. And he goes, hey, by the way, this guy backed out of this card. Do you still want it? Like the luck that had to have occurred in order for me to be able to get this card was like everything had to fall in line. So it was just such a fun experience. And if anybody's ever spoken to Worlds competitors, like they're very difficult to deal with. Sorry, guys. Like this one wasn't particularly, but like I've dealt with a lot of those Worlds collectors or the collectors, competitors. Actually, even Rusty, the 05 set that he bought with the finalist. I can't say with 100% accuracy, but I can say with probably 98%. I was speaking to that particular competitor with that set, like maybe 8 or 9 months before that auction came up for Rusty. He found me on Reddit of all places, like shot me a DM and was like, hey, do you want one? Are you looking to buy one of these? And it was a picture of 2 05 finalists. And I was like, huh? Like, yeah, man, like, what's your phone number? Like, give me something more than a Reddit DM,
Yeah.
And he sent me a picture and had like everything from 05, like every place, every stamp. And yeah, I mean, I'll be transparent. Like, I think we were at like 25 or 30K or something. I threw it in for everything. I was like, just all raw, like I'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is with Worlds competitors, they don't know how much they want for the cards, but they know it's more than what you're going to offer.
Yeah.
Which is just a fun thing. So he said no to that. And then they ended up selling for what? I think 25 is when Rusty bought them raw.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think what Rusty graded and then what he sold that card for, and then that multiplier too. Like we're talking at that point, big number. Rusty did really well on that transit. I
He
think even
great buy.
Rusty, and you can let people know like what I mean, I think Rusty's been transparent that he sold it for 50,000. Like everyone
Mhm.
knows that, but to buy it for 20,000, to grade it, and then in a very short window of time to then sell it for 50. Like that's the plays when we talk about in this hobby. Like if you put the time into it, you can spend 25,000 and make 50,000. And that's when you start moving up to those high dollar amounts. It's funny, like as recently as yesterday, I'm making videos talking about taking dollar cards and making $5, $10 on it.
Right.
Now fast forward 24 hours later, now we're talking about spending $25,000 on a card and making $50,000. The profit on that's only 100%, but when you start talking those dollar amounts, it's like it
It's
changes.
mind blowing. It's mind
Yeah.
blowing to think about with cardboard. Like it's crazy. And Rusty did, for 2005 Worlds cards, like the 2005 finalists, this was the first time I'd ever even seen one surface to be a public sale. I knew they had exchanged hands, and I had an idea on price of what they had exchanged hands for. But it was, I mean, even on private sales, you never saw an 05 finalist. And he got the finalist as well as every stamp below. So like quarter finalists, top 16, he got all of those for 25K. And
All of
sold
them. Yeah,
one of
yeah.
those,
And they
one
sold
of
one
those
of them for
cards
50. Yeah, yeah.
and graded with CGCs. There was no upcharge, like nothing. They were just like, here's a CGC 9, like good luck.
Yeah.
And he
Paid
did extremely
$10.
well.
I think it was $10 for grading,
Jesus. Just so crazy. And I remember like it's funny because I DM'd him when I saw him post those. I was like, dude, like I think I know who you got these from. And he ended up selling it to it's like Run My Meister or something, who I had talked to, who has an insane Worlds card collection.
I heard he was just looking for that card forever personally and just never could find it. I think that's
Well,
it just
I
came down to
DM'd him and was like, hey, I was like, do you see what Rusty had? He's like, yeah, I bought it. I was like, you're the guy who he's putting the video out about. Okay, this makes sense.
yeah.
So it was just, yeah, it's just funny when and I think you said in the beginning, is like, you look at some of the communities surrounding some of the niches of this hobby, and it's like, it can be so fun. And I know that people are watching, they're thinking like, 50,000, 30,000, like these are insane numbers. Like, I'm not going to try and like pretend that I'm desensitized to $30,000 and 50 grand for like cards. And I have never spent personally like anywhere like near that amount for a single card. But the thing is it doesn't matter if it's 30K or if it's like $100. It's like, if there's a lot of demand for it, it's so fun to find them. That's really the biggest thing. Price aside, like, and I'm sure you've found some stuff like you've got definitely some cool Japanese things that.
And not only does it feel good to find it, it just feels even better when you hit that 10 or you hit that 9 or there's been a few cards that I've made pop once in my life, and every time I do it, it's just the best feeling. Like I always say, it's like warm water just runs over you. Like it's just like this super great feeling anytime you do that, because you're just like, okay, first of all, I did very well. But second of all, I'm like, yeah, I don't know. It's a lot of different emotions that come over you for something like that. So no, I hear
It's
you.
like yeah, it's fun to do it because especially if there's a lot of demand for it and people are trying to do that at the
Yeah.
same time. Like it's not like, we're grading Pop One energies. It's like, no, these are like, there's like 100 and something nines
Yeah,
and no
there's
tens.
those are all the pops right there of
Yeah.
8.5
Yeah.
energy.
You own that.
That's why
You
they're in
own
a
the
full
energy market.
frame. But no, I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
And
It's just such a fun, it's just such a fun experience. And especially when you get into like, and that's partially why I like niches and even other TCGs that I've like dabbled in. It's like finding those kind of rare pockets of hobbies is always really enjoyable. I don't find as much enjoyment if it's something that like people aren't after, or like there's not a community aspect to it. Like I can go find rare old stuff that nobody cares about. It's hard to find because nobody's looking. But
yeah.
there's other stuff that's like, oh wow, there's like a very tight knit community, and it's so fun to talk that stuff with people. Like, like you and I can probably talk about like certain types of cards for like hours, and people are like, what the hell are these guys talking about? They're not even a holo, bro. They're talking about trainers. Like, we can hear that constantly. I've been told that like so many times. But
well, I was doing a live once, and I guess it's definitely like a not as nichey play, but the reverse hollow TV reporter from EX Dragon.
mhm.
Like Rusty had it at auction. I was doing a live. I was ready to buy it. And for whatever reason, I thought the auction was ending at 10, but it ended up ending at like 9:46. It was like 14 minutes early, and I had no clue, but I was ready for it. And I was like just heartbroken on the screen. And you can like see it in my face. I'm like, what had just happened? That card sold for like $56. My max bid would have been like 200 just to get it. And then Old Card Shop was in that live, and I remember him writing something like, you're really into this hobby when you're super depressed and you didn't get a PS6 or PSA 6 of a card, like you're really
A
in when you
reverse
get
hollow.
a reverse hollow for some mass produced set.
Right. Yeah, it's just interesting too whenever there's certain cards that you're looking for that like they're not on eBay. They're just not there. And that's one thing that I've really enjoyed about, the community, especially and making all the relationships that I've been able to do. And most relationships that I've done, if not all of them, have always been around organic interest in certain cards or certain like promos or just certain collections. Like I have no qualms like going on Instagram and finding people and just being like, dude, I love this. You could have 4 followers, you could have 100,000. Like, I don't care. And Blastoise gets a prime example of that. Like this guy had like 60 followers, but I was like, dude, this is amazing. Like, where'd all this stuff come from?
And he had all the medals too, which is just the
Oh,
medals.
dude, it's, I mean, John's collection doesn't make sense. And unfortunately, like the only way I'll be able to like I would love to go to his house in Florida and like fly out there and just catalog it all for him. If I have the time to do it, I would do that because he doesn't even know what he has. He doesn't know the value. He doesn't have time to do it.
Well, he opened up a legendary pack on your stream. He was like, "Is this expensive?" And we were like, "Yeah, it's like $1,000." He just opened.
No, he opened 2 legendary
sorry,
packs. No, yeah, I saw somebody saying that earlier, and I think that was Echo Based Collectibles my favorite like reaction to everything. He's like, no, he just couldn't.
I think he pulled like a reverse hollow Charmeleon or something. It wasn't like anything great.
He lost money on those packs, I think, but still, like he didn't really like. I think he had like 8 of them or something. He was like, let's open it.
Yeah.
And it was just, it's so funny to see like somebody who doesn't care because I appreciate that. Like, I'm not a sealed product guy. I'm not somebody who's like, hide them all away, like do all this. I'm like, but they're so fun to open. Like, isn't that the play? Like, you want to open them and like enjoy it and hope you pull something. Sure, it's disappointing. And in that price range, it's like, yeah, it takes some cojones to open $1,000 pack.
It's that guy though. It's a guy that doesn't care. He'll pull the ultimate god pack of legendary collection because everybody out there watching this video, like there is the potential for that legendary collection god pack where you get the reverse hollows to Charizard and then you hit the hollow Charizard, like that is a possibility in that set. And if that was ever recorded on a stream, and assuming it wasn't like the ultimate repack just for amazing clicks, like if it was a true pull, that video would go hyper viral. That would be one of the most amazing pulls back to back ever in this hobby. So
yeah, and it was so awesome. I mean,
just a guy like that would get it though. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, for sure. And be like, how much can I sell it for? Is this a lot? Yeah. I mean, that's John's whole like, that's his whole vibe of all of that. But his the funny thing too that he I mean, just walking around with his laptop in his basement with just so many pieces of memorabilia. You mentioned the Tropical Mega Battle, the medals. Like he had the #1 medal, the #2 medal, the #3 medal. Like he won all of it back in the day as a kid, which is like insane. So just even memorabilia like that. I know Pokenomics Jake talks a lot about opening a museum one day. Like that's his goal. And for anybody who has never seen it, it's on my channel. But like if you could even if you just had this guy's stuff in a museum, like it's worth it. Like that's worth $5 admission a tour to walk through this stuff. Yeah. Like I can't even describe like how many different things that he has that in the condition that they're in is almost impossible to even comprehend. Outside of like Dave and Dave Persian's like collection, which is like immortalized at this point. I don't even know what he's going to do with that. We'll have to see what happens in the future, but yeah.
And when me and you were down in Denver together, we were just talking about, different videos and stuff. And we talked about the one that I had MK Poke CC on, and I talked about how he was able to source Trophy Kangaskhan's, was one of the first to ever grade a 10, was the first person to ever grade an SSB #3 trainer in a 10. First one to ever do it in 2009. And he was washing dishes as a summer job in high school. I mean, that is a card that is greater than $100,000 today. There is no high school junior in the world that is washing dishes, saving up enough money to buy that card. And then, one of the things I really liked was he had like an 97 Pika trophy. And he had like the number one, he had the super faded one. He sourced that and stuff. And he was like super depressed because, after grade. And then he traded for his Illustrator Pikachu. And part of that trade was like the Trophy Kangaskhan's. And there was the Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres, the phone cards
The
graded in
TMBs, yeah.
Yeah, so he had a bunch of, but one of the things he still has is the jacket from the original TMB. And it's like the red jacket. And I asked him, I was like, you didn't sell that, right? He's like, oh no, I still got that in my closet at my house. And I'm just like, you have like a TMB jacket, like that jacket alone. First of all, they never come up for sale, but if they did, I can't even imagine the price.
A few grand, easy.
Yeah. And
easy.
It's just sitting in his closet, like
yeah,
it's next to his sweatshirts.
Yeah, well, even just think of like the sentence that you just said and all the cards you just named, like that. And I've told so many people about that video when you had that guy on. I mean, it was just like, I remember seeing that name like so long ago and just like understanding like the story. It's probably like an E4 or somebody talking about it.
No, he had a YouTube channel. That's how I knew him. I knew him through his YouTube channel.
Oh, well, maybe I stumbled across it. I don't even know. Like,
well,
that
he
was just
was on E4, but he was in Poke Gym back in the day. He was like big in Poke Gym. And he sourced his Snap card when they did the Snap Poly Whirl.
Mhm.
Like, so at the time, everybody thought that all the Snap cards had a release of 10. And then one of the winners released a photo and it showed 15. And then everybody believed it was 15. And then time went by a little bit. Now we've all agreed on the number that there's 20 of each Snap card. But it's funny too, because we talk about some of these numbers and we just take them for gospel. Like, okay, there's 36 Illustrator Pikachus. There's 20 of each Snap card. What people don't realize is pull yourself out of today and go back 10, 15, 20 years ago. These numbers don't exist. These were literally the guys that figured out these numbers. And like the Snap, all the Snap cards being 20, one of the reasons they got to that number was because of what MK Poke CC did. He paid somebody to translate a Japanese article for him to pull that data out of. It was like you needed somebody to translate stuff for you back then, where now
pre-internet, guys.
Yeah,
so crazy.
I recite there's 20 Snap cards. If anybody says, how do you know that? I'm like, I don't know. I heard it from somebody, probably heard it from somebody, heard it from somebody. Like, who the hell knows where that information came from? Or how did they get to the number of 36 Illustrator Pikachus? Like, that number has changed drastically over time too. How did we wind up on 36? I don't know. I'm sure there's somebody out there could tell you, but I'm not that guy, but I could tell you the number, So
yeah, it's what's so fascinating with this is because there's so much stuff to even learn. Like, there's still new and E4 is such a treasure trove of just information. I mean, you talk about the most dedicated researchers in Pokemon. I mean, I have learned so much from farming and going like 10 pages deep in threads of like, even just looking at cards and being like, what the hell is this card? And then finding out like an entire backstory behind it is just so fun. And I think I just mentioned that to you yesterday in a live. There was an artist, and I'm going to butcher the name, but it's Sarada or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but
yeah, she's done a lot of cards recently. I want to say it's like the Burning Shadows Pikachu is like the one I really like that she made. But I know what you're saying. Somebody sent it to me, and I guess there's Pokeballs hidden in all her cards, but like nobody.
That's so cool to stumble across that. Like, that's the type of stuff that like makes me absolutely love like this hobby, because like to my knowledge, there's never been any like hidden Easter eggs in cards before, at least in Pokemon. And so I just found that so funny that like after all this time that she's been doing art, like somebody finally put it together.
And it's like, and she never said anything and nobody knew. Then once they did, and like the Pokeballs are not apparent, like they're colored.
They're hard to
the
find.
side of mountains and stuff, like, or there'll be like bubbles in the background for some water Pokemon, but one of those bubbles is drawn in to be a Pokeball, like super, super subtle. Yeah. Whoever figured that out was next level.
And it's just so fun to like still learn stuff about, especially, and this is, I think, why, not to get into the vintage versus modern stuff, but like, that's a modern thing that's really awesome. Like, I love that. But like vintage stuff, like there's so many cards that took so much research and talking to connections like in Japan and like these manual translations and like all this stuff to be able to even find out where they were, how many there are supposedly. I just love the history and the historical aspect of Pokemon specifically, which is why I love those type of cards.
Well, think about like the Silver Bible. There were some people
Right.
got the Silver Bible, and there was cards in there that no one had ever seen. A perfect example being like the Snap Magikarp. Everyone assumed it existed, but no one ever knew if it would come out. And then recently, like within the last 2 years, we've actually seen that card hit the market, which again is we living in today. We live in this golden time of Pokemon where
Insanity.
you can pick up trophy cards, you can do this, like you can easily go on whether it's Heritage or PWCC or eBay, and you could pick up some of these grails of grails if you have enough money. But remove yourself from today and go back at any other point in this hobby. Like these aren't even options for people, you know? So we're living in a special time too. And I think some people are being a little spoiled by that fact.
When you look at even the Snap cards, all we had were photos. There were no listings. There was no availability. There was like one photo of certain Snap cards that existed, and that was all people had to go off of until like the last year and 2 years. And I'm on a very like smaller level when it comes to what I track, because I follow Worlds cards availability. That's what I'm always looking for. That's what I'm always looking at, where that market is and all of that. Every saved search you can think of with keywords to find those pop up. And even the last year on those, so many things have surfaced that I'd never expected to see, that have never been seen. I saw a PSA 9 quarterfinalist 2004 card surface, which I found quarterfinalists before Raw, but I've never seen a public sale of one. Those popped up. Even if you look at the 05 finalist as a prime example, like we talked about with Rusty buying that, like it's crazy to see these cards coming out for the first time and being in this hobby when they do. Because I think that's really the fun thing about niches like this is like, there's such a small group of people looking for this stuff that when it does pop up, it's like people just go, oh, random non-hollow trainer. I don't care. Like they move on. Right. But then like that core group is like, holy shit, like there's one here. Whose is this? Like, why did they not do this privately? Like it's so exciting to see this stuff surface now.
So I want to ask you maybe a little more, it's not a drama question, but it's definitely a little bit more going into the weeds. How do you feel about the fact that a lot of this information is closed door type deals? How do you feel about that? Because for a lot of this stuff I talk about, it can be as simple as just finding people who has these cards or even know what these cards are and know the information. And sometimes that alone can be like a tough thing to get through. How have you been able to navigate that? Because I don't want to say it's a community that doesn't always want people to enter, but it's definitely like,
oh, there's gatekeepers for sure.
There's gatekeepers. Okay.
Without question.
I wasn't going to say the word, but there's gatekeepers in that part of the hobby. You are definitely get upset when you talk about these cards too much.
There's gatekeeping like crazy in this hobby. And everybody should just go ahead and accept that. There's no reason to get angry about it or upset about it. Any hobby you're going to get into, there's gatekeepers, especially when it comes to private deals, private sales. There are brokers in the Pokemon community that's what they do. Their entire like big part of their business is brokering private deals. They don't want the eBays of the world, the PWCCs, to have all the commission that they're making. And realistically, when you start looking at like some of these 6-figure cards, I mean, it kind of makes sense. I mean, I'm not giving tax advice on here, but everybody understands that's a big reason for it. But you need experts, you need specialists in order to first off even find the actual cards and make sure they're authentic, even though that can kind of be questionable from what we've seen this past couple of years. But for most of these cards, I think you are getting legitimate people who know what to look for. They know a buyer, they know a seller, and they're putting these deals together. It's in their vested interest to keep new people out, to keep people away from looking at this stuff because it impacts their bottom line. Is it good? I don't know. It's something right now. It's just what people are going to do. It is what it is.
And but as far as level of navigating it too, right? Like know the right channels, know how to get through this stuff.
Yeah. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be a particular goal for people. I mean, the reason that I am so ingrained in the Worlds card market is because I like them and I researched a lot and I asked a ton of questions to a lot of people. That's the crazy strategy that's in there. And then after a while, I would source some, grade them. My sales would have a little bit of a ripple effect. People notice. And now I probably go like every other week now, and I've got somebody messaging me, hey, how much of this world is this world's card worth? Here's what I'm working a deal on. Hey, I thought you'd like this. Like, you almost build kind of a community that finds you because they know what you like. And I think that's a very important thing, is like having a very specific, like, not a specialty, but like stuff that you really enjoy. Like, make it known. Like, let people put out like the beacon of like for me, I'm really into old school Japanese promos, and I'm into worlds cards. Like, people know that about me usually if they follow any of my social stuff. And I'm a very small guy, and I have a lot of people like who still approach me for that. But when it comes to like, if you're just like, I love everything, like, you're not going to break into any market that you want to get. Like, you have to have people know that you like this stuff before you can even get in there. But as far as the gatekeeping stuff, like, those people will exist, but realistically, they're not going to impact 99% of people in this hobby. Like, I have never gotten into a situation where
they
it's
won't
like,
affect 99.999%
yeah.
of the people in the hobby. Some of the people that I'm thinking off the top of my head, it's like, yeah, those people, most people never know they even exist in the first place. So
The guys who have the trophy Kangaskhan's, the guys who have the 97 Pikas, all of this, they've all brokered deals, and they're all buyers and sellers. Like, it's all the same group of people. And I like having an untouchable ceiling up there. Like, I don't mind it, because like, it's so fun to realize that they're there. And I only dream of the day to be able to like, like, I'm good friends with like Jeremy Swolepoke. Like, I would love to be able to hold his trophy Kangaskhan and like be able to look at it. Like, I just appreciate the card for what it is. Like, I don't need to own it at that level. But it's just fun to have people's collections to look up to. Like Zach Jim at Pokemon. I mean, just him completing his most recent goal is like, I mean, that's fantastic. Like, I couldn't be more happy for the guy.
it's just the way you phrased it too. And I made like a special part of my video where I just talked about that. Is there's very few times where like somebody doing like a major collection goal where there's like a vast majority of the people were just happy. Like, when he did that, like, the hobby came together and was just happy. And that means so much for, especially like where we are today, and just this hobby. When he did that, I don't even know how many people reached out to him. Like, I took a whole 25-minute block of one of my lives and just talked about how happy I was when he did that. Like, and he's a great dude.
He's one of the nicest guys ever.
I've met Zach on 2 different occasions. One real quick at Leonhardt Pop-Up Shop, but we didn't talk that long. But then we got a long time to talk at Denver Collecticon. I was super lucky. I walked up to a random table, random binder. The guy had a no symbol Jolteon in there. I bought it. I talked the guy down. First thing I did, I just walked with that no symbol Jolteon. I saw Zach. I said, Zach, here. He goes, he looks at it, and he didn't even like say no. He's just like, thanks. And there was nothing made me happier than to give the biggest no symbol Jolteon collector. And I mean, Zach's got all kinds of stuff, but he's definitely
Jolteon's his main
thing.
squeeze.
So
for
to
sure.
give him that card just felt, it was just like such a rewarding thing. And then the fact that I've now had him on a couple different lives, and he's a good dude, man. I was so happy when he completed that goal. And it seems impossible in a way. And when you break it down and you peel back the layers, like Zach talks about it, he created his YouTube channel originally because he realized he can never complete that goal if the community wasn't helping him. Like, it was such a daunting goal that if people weren't grading, there was a lot, trust me, there's been a lot of people throughout the history of this hobby that have graded 10s and said, Zach needs this 10. They've reached out to Zach and been like, hey man, I got this 10. You're the first person I'm telling. So, and that was one of the reasons he grew that channel and grew that community and done what he's done. That was awesome.
And it all comes back to like, people knew what he was looking for. He made it very clear. This is what I'm going for. This is my goal. And when you do that, and that's a prime example of someone navigating through the gatekeeping or whatever people are looking for, is everybody knew what he was doing. And everybody wants, and overall, I think the community definitely wants to see others achieve and exceed and succeed. But I just think that, I think it's a lot easier to sit on the sidelines and complain about gatekeeping and complain about cards that like you could never afford, you're never going to be a buyer for, and complain about the Logan Pauls of the world. But at the end of the day, like, this is the most, and I've been in a lot of different like collectible communities, I guess I'll say, and Pokemon specifically, there's just so many good people in this, and so many people that are not content creators. Like, that's one thing that a lot of people don't realize. Like, it's not just YouTubers in this space like talking. And I use Instagram primarily as my connection point for a lot of these people, but there are collections, guys, that like some of these Instagram people have that are just absolutely insane. And you will never see a piece of content. Like you're not going to see somebody be like, so and so just posted a video. And like I'll talk to some of these guys and then speak to someone else. I'll say, hey, did you see like so and so post this? And they're like, who? I'm like, how do you not know? He's got this. Like that's what's so fun to still like find the community in that and being able to share some of the cards that are still out there and that people are collecting. It's just such an important part of this hobby that I couldn't imagine not being engaged in it to the degree I am now.
So this brings us to the part of the video where I was looking forward to. I know you mentioned it a little bit, like real quickly earlier in the video, that you're into a lot of different things. It's not just Pokemon. I know you're into stuff like as super niche as Zelda cards and stuff that like
the Zelda plug. I love it.
Yeah, like I don't even know those cards existed, but they're awesome artworks. So tell me a little bit like, so obviously you're super engaged in Pokemon, but what makes you kind of spread out a little bit? And you're going to some really, really niche stuff on the outside. Like over there, I got some bulky booster boxes, like some trash.
Man's got his Batman the animated series. He doesn't want me to spoil his plays, but yeah, that's one of them, right?
You know how many different Star Trek booster boxes are over there? There's like, you would be amazed at how many Star Trek booster boxes were printed. There's one for like Next Gen, the original series, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, like
you know what's funny is like I'm a super Trekkie nerd too, so I love that. I've just never looked at the cards, but
oh, okay, yeah. There's a bunch.
Yeah. I mean, it really came down to when I really started looking around was I got bored in Pokemon for a while. Like I had achieved some really big goals and some really big cards that I was looking for. And it got to a point to where it's not that the cards were hard to find, it's they were hard to afford. They were just expensive. And that's something I think everybody eventually gets to. You start with maybe set cards and I went a little bit different path, but I think people start with set cards from when they were a child, and they end up going like, okay, I've got these now, I've got this. And you start hunting for more and more rare stuff. And I just kind of went in immediately and was like, what's the rarest Japanese promos I could find in this price point? And you end up finding like so much stuff. Like I was one card away from completing an entire PSA 9 Masaki set, which was one thing that I was really like trying to source and look into. It's how Dan Catch 'em All Collectibles and I kind of got connected a little bit. And just finding all these niches. And then eventually it was like anything that I wanted was just, it was during the boom. It was so priced out. Like it was just insane. Like what some of the prices were, especially for like Japanese, like rare cards. I mean, those things exploded. So I started looking around. I was like, what are some other IPs that are out there that I really like? Let's see if they make cards for them. Like that's really as basic as it was. And it was just curiosity. Just got on eBay. I was like, you know what? I used to love Zelda as a kid. Let's look those up. And I ended up finding a company called Interplay who printed 2 Zelda sets. Those are the only, well, there's technically 3 Zelda set cards that I guess have been printed, but Interplay was the one that had
original SNES like tops. Yeah.
Old school. Yeah. That was the third one. I didn't really care about those personally.
That was a fun play until people figured out they existed, and then they really shit on my parade.
Dude, the Zelda Zelda community is pretty great. Like the collector community, it is so active. It's kind of insane. But so I found Interplay, which are pretty awesome. They like, this is one of my favorite like recent ones that I've graded.
Yeah, that was the one you posted in Professor Oak's Discord.
Yeah, so I was really pumped about this one. It's not really a rare card in the set. I know one of the rare cards that I graded recently was this guy, the Skyward Sword Hollow.
But you're grading stuff that people don't even know exists. What's that market like trying to sell into it? Is there just like this
so liquid, PK? Like you have no idea, like so liquid, it's insane.
Don't say that on this channel because people will kill that play.
I've kind of like exhausted. Like I think I've extracted enough from Zelda.
So at this point. Liquid.
No, like so what I did is Zelda I ended up finding, and I found a guy who worked for Interplay before they went either defunct or wherever they're at. And I bought a master set of the entire 2016 Interplay Zelda set. He sent me 3 master sets.
Just
I don't know why.
Reached out to him.
No, I don't know. It was on eBay. I don't know why. And he came down on price, and it was one of those like big thick white boxes. They were brick fresh. Like I'm talking like peeling the cards because they were so fresh.
Yeah.
The overwhelming majority got 8s. That's the big thing with that set. It's so hard to they're so hard to grade. But I sent in 48% of the entire population in one submission.
Wow.
And like, just to give you guys an idea, but once I started posting them, I started seeing more and more people grade them. And I'm not saying that I had any movement on that market, but they sell extremely fast. And that was one thing, like, we're talking hundreds of dollars for some of these cards in an 8. I sold a gold foil as the chase in that for like $180. And the boxes themselves, the booster boxes, are about $475 to $500 roughly. If you bought a single booster box, there's no guarantee of a gold foil or any of that. So I kind of took the fundamentals I learned in Pokemon of like searching for rarity and searching for chases, and I just applied it to that TCG, and it worked out great. I'm still grading some, to this day. The other one I got into is Dragon Ball, because that was the other thing with Pokemon I grew up with that I just absolutely loved. So I was like, man, I'll take a look at these. And then they came out with something called a God Rare in the set Realm of the Gods, which was maybe a little over a year ago.
That's like one per case, right?
No, it's like one per like 6 to 8 cases, apparently. Like their rarity is the rarity is insane. Like, at least for the first one. I don't know what the second one was, but it was the first time they ever released that rarity tier. And that's what bought me in. I was like, I'm in. That sounds really fun. Bought a couple of cases and pulled it live on Instagram. It was before I even had a YouTube channel, and like opened an entire case first. Nothing, didn't get the God Rare. Second case, opened it 4.5 hours after starting the stream. Like Mason jumps in. It's like, hey, have we pulled it yet? I was like, no. 10 minutes later, it's like, there it was.
Wow.
Which is about a $2,000 raw card right now. For anybody
What's
who's
a
wondering.
case of that go for? Ballpark.
Right now, current prices I've seen them anywhere between $2,600 to $3,400 for a case. A lot. If you don't pull that God Rare, you're still only like basically breaking even.
Yeah.
But I got into it mainly for art, and being someone that came from Pokemon, especially like in vintage half art hollows, like these were like insane textured, hollow, beautiful arts on these cards. And the quality control is ridiculous coming from someone who's graded a lot of Pokemon. I've had multiple PSA submissions that have had 20 plus Dragon Ball Super cards, 100% gem rate. I mean, it's just crazy. So really,
and when people talk about Pokemon, they're always like, where can Pokemon's art go from here? I'm like, hey, you gotta just look at Dragon Ball. Like, if you want to know what Pokemon art could do, just look at Dragon Ball, because I think eventually the hobby gets to that point. Luckily, we're not there yet, because I feel like that has to be the end.
It's that's what's crazy though, is because Dragon Ball cards, and a lot of people don't know this, the English ones, they're printed in Japan, and then they ship them over here. And Pokemon cards that are English are printed here. And I'll never forget Mason Cardinal Gaming. It's my favorite thing. He said English cards are the proxy cards of Japanese. And I just crack up at that so much, because it really is almost true, because the quality is just so less, than Japanese for anybody who compares them. But I mean, ultimately there was that. And then I got into most recently I bought Resident Evil cards.
There you go. There's some niche Japanese for you.
There you go.
It's in English. They're the glossy version, the promos.
Yeah. I love the claymation cards. People are divided on those for sure.
This is the same as the Ivy Pikachu, the Black Star promo number 1, but that's not what this card is. This is, you can see right there, they got the promo stamp.
I've only seen photos of that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
I've never known anybody that has it. This is one that I bought recently. This is a Resident Evil Jim Lee promo card that was 1 per case.
That's sick.
This is the 1998 Chromium Wildstorm Resident Evil card set. It's an insanely cool card. Like, the art did it for me. So this is their chase that they talk about. Let me see if I can get that to focus. Come on, focus for me, please. Maybe it wants to.
Trust me, man. Cool Trainer Ryan gives me shit every time I try to show a card on screen.
It's so hard. So they have 4 levels of chase cards, and then the Jim Lee autograph card, but this was 1 per case.
Wow.
And it's a promo card. I mean, this is like Wildstorm did a comic series for this, but I love Resident Evil. Read all the book series, hate the majority of the movies, but like, the story of the games are always fun. But that was another situation where it was like the old like IPs that I like. I'm like, where are these things? And I start looking, I'm like, holy shit, like the packs are $90. Like, where is this? And they're selling. And I'm like, where is this market?
Yeah. Who's buying this? I say that in Pokemon all the time. Who's buying it?
Who is buying this stuff out? But like, that's kind of the fun of it is, and I think, it, not to make it like full financial stuff, but it's kind of like, your stock portfolio, right? You want to diversify stuff. You don't want to throw your eggs all in one basket if you're trying to make money, or if you're a collector. Like, if you like collecting stuff, like this stuff should speak to you. It's just like taking that first step and just looking around and going, okay, there's something other than just the new Pokemon set. And I think Pokemon does a really good job of distracting people from other TCGs because they release so often. I couldn't tell you how many times like a set comes out and all I see are videos talking about like the reprint of another one or the next set that's already in Japan. Like for someone who's primarily vintage who like would love to dabble a little bit in modern, like it's overwhelming because it's like there's so many, like you're on to the next thing before the other thing's already printed, you know?
Dude, Crown Zenith came out like less than 2 weeks ago, and everybody's already moved on to Scarlet and Violet when it comes to like the content creation, you know?
Well, everybody wants to be first to market talking about it.
I think people are still open Crown Zenith, but I think as it comes to videos, it's like, nope, it's Scarlet and Violet. We're not talking about anything else. And maybe you'll see like a speculation like Evolving Skies reprint video. That's about the extent of Pokemon content right now.
And that's the hard thing. It's like, you know, to follow it, I just it makes it less interesting to me because I'm like, well, I thought we were talking about this, but this is better now. Okay, let's look at this. And it's like, you know, for this stuff, it's nice to kind of slow down and look at IPs and TCGs that are just either completely dead and they just released what they released, or you know, for Dragon Ball, for example, they don't reprint sets. So like when they come out with a set, it'll stay there for months. And it's like, okay, this is easy to follow. We'll get 4 sets a year, roughly, something like that. And it's like, okay, I can chase these. There's some subsets they do, some collector items. But being able to like follow it a little bit easier and understand like they're going to give you time to digest it, enjoy it, build decks around it for competitive play. And it just feels like Pokemon is just like printers go burr. And they're just like, whatever, you know?
Alex said, Alex in chat put a great comment. He says, in Pokemon, if you're on time, you're late. But I also think about that quote from Ricky Bobby, if you're not first, you're last in Pokemon. It's the same thing. If you're not first, you're last. So
that is so true. And chat's had some super awesome questions. Sorry, guys, I've been like ignoring some people. Alex did also ask me, he said, who's your favorite artist / era of cards? My favorite artist is Uyama, mainly for Uyama's Pikachu. I love an old school 2D kids looking like art. That's why I love the Art Academy cards. So Uyama's always been a favorite of mine. Nishida's pretty awesome too. I like her stuff, but Uyama's probably going to take it for me. Favorite era of cards. I'm not really a set collector, but I love like Team Rocket Returns is super sick. I think the art on those is just like phenomenal.
The Articuno is one of my favorite. I mean, the Snorlax in that set is great. There's just so many good ones.
Yeah, it's hard to even narrow it down. I mean, Pokemon, I normally wouldn't even like, I don't care about Hitmonlee, and I'm like, damn, that looks super legit. Like, and I just, you know, it's just because they made the art so well. And same thing with like Skyridge. Skyridge is like, in my opinion, probably peak Pokemon art. I mean, when you can make like a Muck look badass, it's like,
well, there's no Muck.
They're doing
there's
such
no
a,
Muck.
or not
there's
Muck,
no
but
Muck in Skyridge.
Who is I'm trying to think of the one. It's one of those type of Pokemon. I'm trying to remember exactly who it is. It's not like Grimer or somebody like that, maybe. One of the sludge ones, if I remember correctly. Or no, I'm sorry. No, I'm thinking of.
There's 2 different Magmars in there.
It's Golem. Golem's in there, right?
So Golem's a crystal.
Oh, okay. I'm trying to remember who it was. There's some Pokemon to that level that like I would never think is badass at all. But I remember seeing the art and just being like, why does this thing look so amazing? Like,
there's a lot of those in Skyridge though, yeah.
Yeah, and it just so I would say those to answer that question. But yeah, no, being on time, you're late, it makes perfect sense. And again, that's one of the things that I encourage like a lot of my Pokemon audience, because even when I post on my Instagram, and this is always like the telltale, I'll post Dragon Ball on my Instagram, it does not get likes, like compared to like, I'll post like anything Pokemon, it's like 60, 70 likes, like good to go. Yeah. Oh, I love this. That's awesome. I'll post like a badass Dragon Ball card. That's maybe like a $300 card in a 10 that I've just recently graded. It's like 14 likes, and it's more like pity likes of like, oh, he posted something. And I'm just like, guys, this is so cool. Like, come on.
So hold on real quick. Obi-Wan Kenobi, which is just a funny name. He says, also a quote in Ricky Bobby, when he confronts his dad says, hell, Ricky, I was high when I said that. You could be lots of things. You could be second. You can be third. Hell, you could even be fourth. So Obi-Wan Kenobi, great
That's pretty awesome. That's how I feel when it comes to sets. I'm like, yeah, that one that just came out. They're like, dude, that's like 3 sets ago. I'm like, all right, I have no idea what I'm doing. So, but that's another thing too, is like spending the time to kind of research into things that you want to get into instead of like listening to just the content around it, because you will be behind. Most of the people like pushing a lot of the modern stuff, at least in Pokemon, they have distro contracts with them. Like they're buying that stuff. They probably just did their allocation. They're like, time to make a video. Like, that's the thing, is like people get mad whenever people are like pumping their own product. But at the end of the day, you have to realize that like most YouTube content creators who are pushing certain sets and things like that, like it's a business, it's a big advertisement. They can be excited about it. That can be organic, sure. But at the end of the day, it's meant to like, let's pre-order these boxes. Let's make this happen. Let's buy these that I'm loading up on. Which is not a bad.
I got a play coming real quick from PSA. It's coming back. I'm just waiting for it.
Yeah.
Like, I think I'm going to have close to 100% of the population on a card, and then it's just going to explode. And I can't wait.
That's amazing.
We're rocket shipping.
We're mooning all day.
It looks disgustingly close to this, but it's not this.
Well, that's kind of the fun thing too with some of these niche TCGs as well. Like if you can just do your research, because that's the biggest barrier to entry for anything like this, is like people don't want to take the time to just learn the stuff. And it's not, it doesn't take.
They want to ask the question, what should I buy? I'm like, listen, if I tell you what to buy, you're already behind the 8 ball on that. Like,
I've had some people, I think Landon was in here earlier. He was like, there was a foil Zelda puzzle. It's like 9 cards that paints this full picture of Link like riding on Epona in front of a castle or something. He's like, it was a snap buy. I don't even like Zelda. He's like, I just bought it off your eBay. I was like, that's amazing, dude. Like, I love that you loved it so much. You're like, this is the art and I'm going to buy this. And he just kind of trusted it because he liked the art.
Listen, I've bought Bobby World's cards before. I got all kinds of stuff. You know, I over there, I have an uncut sheet of Bobby's World cards. So,
I love it.
Yeah.
Between you and Jake Pokenomics, you guys have probably the most oddities. Well, DJ Gigabyte, actually, he takes the crown.
Yeah, I wouldn't put myself, DJ Gigabyte. But the thing about him is I would just go and search it and say, oh, this looks cool, I'm going to buy it. DJ Gigabyte does it way different. He's like, oh, okay, I'm going to buy it. And then I'm going to find out literally every possible nuance about this thing. And I'm going to spend hours of my time. You know, he's on a different level than I am.
Yeah, he posted some Xena Warrior Princess cards. You have
I own nothing. Xena Warrior Princess cards. I own them. So
I was like, "There's nothing this guy doesn't buy." Like, it's so awesome.
I own those too. So
that's funny. Yeah, my whole thing is like the biggest barrier to entry, and it's unfortunate because these TCGs don't release as many sets as Pokemon. So like, it's so much easier to learn. You can learn so much quicker. You know, for me, like I've always enjoyed
talk about them all the time because the information just kind of ends though, where Pokemon seems to be like never ending in a way.
And there's Bulbapedia. That's kind of what I said in the beginning, is like, what's harder, sourcing the cards or finding out the information on the cards? Like, and I've run into situations where I could source the cards, but like, I don't know what the chases are. Like the Resident Evil stuff took me to like some website made in 1998 where a guy who's super passionate about Resident Evil posted an article in like a Word text document. It's like, here's the chases and here's what came out. But like, there's nothing official that I can find on that stuff. I mean, it was late 90s. They were printing everything into a card at that point. But it's that type of fun, like, again, the treasure hunt, like really chasing that stuff. And, you know, again, it's kind of goes back to like me looking into old school Japanese promos and like really finding out the stories and the backstories and the acquisition and all of that, being able to, I guess, take those type of fundamentals that I did with that and applying it to other TCGs. And it's fun. That's at the end of the day, there has to be organic interest, just like anything that you're buying and selling. But if you like old stuff or you like certain IPs, just take a look out there. There's probably something that's really cool. You know, you can buy Star Trek booster boxes, Batman the Animated Series, which I think is probably the coolest thing you've ever mentioned that you've gotten it from what I've heard.
I have a couple Batman Animated Series over there, different ones.
It's so cool, and especially with Kevin. What's his last name? He just passed recently. He was the voice of Batman. Obi-Wan Kenobi, Where's My Boy Meets World TCG, right?
So it's funny you said Batman the Animated Series, because I've showed this on my channel before. That's how you know I have it. But it is one of my favorite booster boxes. It's one thing, like the front artwork's cool. You got Batman and Robin, you got the Batmobile right there. Like, that's cool. Obviously, you got the Gotham background with that old school artwork. But that's not what's cool about this booster box. This is what's cool. Is the Batmobile's on the side, and then in the front of the box is the front of the Batmobile, And then on the back side is the back of the Batmobile. And then obviously the other side, like, that's why I like this booster box, because when you display it, you don't display this box like this. You display this box
The
like
Batmobile
this.
box. That's so
Yeah.
awesome.
And then and it's just the fact that the front, I mean, I'm not opening this box for that reason, you know? And
Mhm.
sure, it's like 36 packs or whatever, but I like stuff like that. And the thing about that box too, and the best part is when I bought that box, I didn't know that. I didn't know that that Batmobile was on the side of the box. I wasn't until I got it in hand. I was like, I love this. That's one of my favorite booster boxes for that reason. And I don't even know what I paid for that. Maybe like 30-40 bucks sealed, you know?
Yeah, shout out to the box artist. But yeah, even like Kevin Conroy is who I was thinking of, him passing recently. Yeah, I'm surprised that stuff hasn't been like invigorated. Like people have been looking back at it, because I mean, that was such a massive, like people forget, like Mask of the Phantasm, that movie came out like in theaters, which is so unheard of, like for a back then, like superhero, especially animated cartoon, like to be in theaters for that. But
Yeah.
that's the fun thing, is like you look at some of the historical stuff in this, and the old school IPs that are out there. I think, yeah, Ancient Me was like, there's literally Rugrats cards. Like if you can think of it, if you've seen it, like there's probably some sort of CCG or TCG with it. But they're just really fun to get into. I guess to come back to the original question before we went on our tangent, but like
Yeah.
they're just really fun to find, and it just takes kind of that treasure hunting to a whole different level. It's like, if I like the cards, I like the art, which is really, the art is really what buys me into a lot of these that I look at. If I don't like the art, I don't care. I don't ever buy anything that I either don't understand or I don't enjoy looking at. But once I'm able to like source that stuff or find it, or go into, the most niche like Facebook groups to ask the community where they're looking, or just lurking and looking at their posts, like that's the fun part about finding that stuff, is like a hidden gem, some guy who's, oh, I never really sell, but I've also got like this bunker. And it's like, dude, yes, like let me get some of this stuff. So
Yeah.
it's just a really fun, enjoyable way to collect. It's not just opening packs. That's my whole like bottomless pit when it comes out. I do open Dragon Ball Super. I will say, like, before anybody calls me a hypocrite, like I Dragon Ball Super is like a investment vehicle for me to like have constant product for my eBay, and I enjoy opening it, and I like the art a lot. But like, it's as far as stuff that I like to hunt, like Dragon Ball Super is not really a hunt for me. It's just more of, that's what I get my vice of like opening packs from, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Ancient Muse says, PK, do you have any Wizard Harry Potter? I have Quidditch Cup. I bought really recently, like within the last 2 years, and I think I paid like 112 a booster box, and I was way, 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 way late to that game. There's a lot of people that have way lower prices than me. So I'd say if you pick that up at auction, you're probably still close, and that's definitely the cheapest of all the Wizard or Harry Potter sets. So yeah, that's the one I bought.
I never got
But
into Harry Potter. Never even thought about it.
I
I've
only
never been a
bought
Harry
one
Potter
just
guy,
to
but
have one, just so I could say, like, I looked at the base set ones and they were selling for like 400 bucks, 300 bucks at the time. And I'm like, I'm not about to spend, I like to spend like 10, 15, 20, $30. I like it where I buy the booster box for $10 and the shipping is $10. And literally that's the cheapest you could find, because nobody's selling it for less than the shipping, you know? And
right.
like, it's funny, like on eBay, these booster boxes in a weird way have like close to a bot or like a floor of like $20, because of, you always have to pay for shipping. You never can like get product for zero. Where maybe if I walked into like a local LGS that's selling this stuff, like maybe I could pick it up for $10, but that would just, listen, I'm gonna do the $10 convenience fees on. I think one of the more recent ones I bought, I showed the booster box on a live stream, was like Feifel Goes West. It was like a cartoon of a mouse in Wild West time. It was a one-off movie in the 90s. Listen, I bought that booster box. I spent $19 on it. Like, I have some crap that is, it will never move. It just goes into the corner and it just stays there, and it accumulates dust, and then once in a while I'll like pull it out. But
Did you watch that show, or like
no, I didn't. I just
you
didn't
just
have
saw
that
it and you were
booster
like, I'm gonna
box.
buy this?
Well, I didn't
I
have
just
it, so I had to get it. If I don't have something, you need to own it, right?
the most dangerous mindset ever. Looking through, just type in TCG on eBay. If I don't have it,
Oh,
like,
listen, I
let's
do it
make it
all the time.
happen.
I don't want to tell people my search terms, but honestly, some of my search terms is 18 packs ending soonest, 24 packs ending soonest, 36 packs ending soonest. And I just, And trust me, I've seen like so many bra ads when you do that, like bras, like for
Oh,
women. Like there's so many weird random eBay search results that come up when you do that, but I've done that so many times and I just wait for something to come up that I've never seen before. So, but the one thing I don't have a lot of is, funny enough, Magic the Gathering, which, Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, very comparable. I don't have a lot of Magic, but anyways, Peak, we're like coming into an hour 25 minutes on this live. I did want to just, again, thank you for coming on this channel. I always enjoy talking Pokemon, and I think you bring such a awesome perspective to this hobby, and you're doing something that not a lot of people are doing. So I just want to say, thank you so much for coming on. And for anybody out there who does not know, in the description of this video are 2 links. There's a link to Peekdatchu's YouTube channel. Definitely go watch those. He has a lot of awesome lives that he's done with a lot of really big name collectors in this hobby. My personal favorite isn't actually that Blastoise kid, Joe Echo Base Collectibles one. My personal favorite is the Charlie Herlocker Rusty one. That was my personal favorite. But there's a lot of great videos. And then the other link is his Instagram. If you guys want to get a hold of him, if you are selling one of those real niche Worlds promos, you want to reach out to him and you want a buyer, he's your man. But do you have any closing thoughts before we sign off?
Yeah, man. Thank you. This was such a fun conversation. I always love, just very organically talking cards and not always just the market and the financials. It's always good to like see a little bit of what I would consider like the glimmer of passion that people have in this hobby of just the collecting aspect of it. And I think you definitely brought that to this, and I so appreciate you doing that, and so appreciate you having me on the channel, man. This is always a good time, and I hope to do it again soon. And chat, thank you guys so much for questions. Anybody's stuff I missed, I'm sorry. Just we kind of got caught up in how good the conversation was, but again, follow my channel, guys. I do usually just PSA returns, and then I have my collector showcase series, this whole playlist. It's 7 or 8 episodes. You guys can just go through it. They're all about an hour to an hour and a half long max. I cut them off to make them digestible. There is a season 2 that I'm going to do. I don't have a date for it yet, but I do have a list that's built of the people who are going to be on it. You guys are going to be like blown away with it, but it is coming. So just know that like it's not just PSA returns and me sitting with like 7 or 8 people talking the hobby, even though those are fun. There is going to be a season of that, because I do get asked about that pretty regularly. But again, PK, thanks so much, man. This was such a good time, and again, so appreciate you having me on.
And we're definitely going to do this again in the future, so I'm excited.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. Thank you.
All right, man. I appreciate you, and I know I could say for myself, I know I could say for Peekdatchu, we appreciate every single one of you guys, that tuned in. You guys donate us your time. We can't thank you enough. And with that said, we'll catch you on the next video.